Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, joined by my editor, Jim Aiello. And Jim, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Me and you are still here, along with
Yeah,
Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. That is the decision that Colts principal owner Carlie Irsay-Gordon came to not last night, not yesterday, a week ago, as she
yep.
revealed in our news conference with us yesterday. So let's start there. Were you surprised at all with the decision?
Come on. Come on. I mean, like you and I sat here last week, I think at this time a week ago, trying to prepare Colts fans for exactly this. We knew, but like, again, I'm not advocating for it. I wasn't defending Chris Ballard. I don't think you were either. I know you weren't, in fact, because of the column you wrote that said that Chris Ballard his time to fix the Colts is up. Like he's had his chance. So again, neither of us were defending the Chris Ballard era. What we were trying to tell Colts fans was that this is a tricky situation for Colts ownership. At least that's the way they see it, again, and that this was probably likely to happen. Like, it's not shocking. So much of any business, everybody, I mean, this is not a football thing. This is a life thing. Like, it comes down to personal relationships. Chris Ballard has a good personal relationship with the Irsays, right? Jim before Carlie, but Carlie Irsay-Gordon and they came up in a lot of ways together. He helped bring her into the organization. She helped bring out the best in him. We saw this in the Jordan Rodriguez profile that we read a couple like last week. That these two were close. Firing somebody that you're close to in your first year as a new owner. Again, we all wrote and talked about like she's been preparing for this. She's been studying for this. She has. All that is true. But when you get in the seat and your first move is going to be hire the person that you trust the most, it's a hard decision to make. That is what we were trying to explain last week, I think. I think maybe we didn't do a good enough job doing it, but I think that's where we landed now is that it was hard to pull the plug on somebody that I think she believes in, first of all. I think she does believe him as a person who can run a football team, but somebody that I think she is close to. Somebody that I think she has a personal relationship with. And I just think that's what ended up being kind of the deciding factor was early on in my tenure, we're not going to make big sweeping changes and especially not with somebody that I trust and believe in. So again, I'm not defending it, not advocating for it. I
So
can get
you
into some of the
sound like
reasons.
it.
I'm trying to tell listeners what I think Carlie Irsay-Gordon was thinking. And again, you wrote about what she said yesterday. Again, Zach Kiefer and Jordan Rodriguez wrote a little bit about more of the insight into who she is and what she believes in and how she's very process oriented, which again, we talked about. I said I tend to be a process person over results person. I got the sense that Carlie might be that same kind of person that is more into, hey, like we were 7-1, we were 8-2, everything was looking great. Like, why change things? We just had some really bad luck. We'll run it back next year and things will be great. I can't stress enough. I'll say one more time before I let you finally talk. I can't stress enough that I am saying that was the right approach. I am just saying that is the approach that she believes in and that she took.
Jim Aiello sucking up to billionaire owners in the year 2026. I just didn't picture that. You're a changed man in the new year, but no, I totally get where you're coming from. And I think when looking back at the press conference yesterday, and a lot of the questions I had going into it, the biggest among them, atop that list, was probably the evaluation of this year versus looking at the entire tenure of Chris Ballard. And I know Shane Steichen's in that same conversation, and we'll get to him in a moment.
Yeah.
But for now, let's focus on the GM, the guy who has been here the longest, quite frankly, when it comes to that front office regime. And that to me was understandable, but also very risky. Meaning, the way Carlie evaluated Chris, it seemed like this was based off of this 1 year more than the 8 other years leading up to year 9. That's number one. Number two, she also described this season as a tale of two seasons, where you have the good tale, the fairy tale at the beginning. You're 8-2, you're atop the AFC, and you're a Super Bowl contender. And then you get that reality check and you lose your last 7 games, largely, I think, due to injuries, but other
Sure.
factors were a part of that because this team cannot win or close games no matter who's out there, it seems like. And you finish 8-9.
Yeah.
So although she didn't explicitly say this, her actions and her reasoning yesterday basically laid out that she believes the team that we saw that was 8-2 was not a mirage. It was not a fluke. That they can do this again and
Correct.
sustain it, perhaps with better injury luck. But she also mentioned that injuries aren't an excuse and you have to finish games. That's the part where I'm like, well, when have they ever done that? So the crux of it to me is this willingness to run it back with the belief that what we saw for the better part of 2 months was what we'll see for an entire season next year. I don't know if that is a smart decision. I understand it, but boy, I can also empathize with the fans who are like, enough of this, because the word she kept saying throughout this press conference, Jim, was urgency. And there's never been a higher sense of urgency. And just let the listeners in to how we kind of talked about this. As soon as the press conference ends, usually when these things happen, whether it's Carlie Irsay-Gordon, Chris Ballard, or I'm just calling to say what's up, I'm calling Jim Aiello about a lot of things in life. And that happened after the press conference. And the first thing you're telling me is, why wasn't the urgency already at its highest last year? So what was your interpretation of that part of it? Because I tried to pin her down. And I did ask, what did you glean from those first 8 years, 9 years to give you belief for a 10th year? And she mentioned, well, we have to have urgency. And I'm like, well, how has that been portrayed to them? How is this feel any different? And she just told me it's higher than last year.
That was the part that, okay, here, let me at least start here. I respect quite a bit the fact that she decided to step in front of a microphone the day after making a controversial decision.
That is true.
And answer questions. Like, most owners don't do that. Most owners put out a statement, or if that, some don't say anything. And if they do, they put out a statement. She went out there and tried to face the music. Immense credit for that. Like, honestly, I don't think a lot of owners would do that. She deserves to be recognized for that. That said, her answers were not satisfying. And I think her answers were probably, frankly, upsetting to some Colts fans, which, again, to be fair, I'm not sure what she was going to say that was going to please Colts fans. But I will say the urgency thing did bug me. Like, how can there be, what do you do to be more urgent? What is the higher urgency this year? And why wasn't it going to, like, you talked about Chris and Shane needed to prove something this year. She talked about that back in the summer.
Yeah.
And then now their urgency is going to be higher, which, to be honest with you, I kept thinking about this last night, like in practice. What does higher urgency mean in practice? You can't trade any more first round picks. That was pretty urgent. Like you done that. You can't really be more aggressive in free agency. You signed 2 top tier free agents, at least from last year's class, and this year's class isn't going to be awesome or anything. So what are we talking about? What is the like? You want to win more? I'm not quite sure what higher urgency means, and that she relied on those words pretty heavily. I think she said it 6 or 7 times. So again, there's nothing she was going to say that was going to be pleasing to Colts fans or was going to make them understand or like this decision. But the higher urgency thing was like, it bugged me a little bit just because you are operating in a place where the urgency should be the highest all the time for the most part. Like this is a DEFCON 1 situation anyway. Like just one's the highest, right? I always forget. They always get flipped in my head.
You got it, brother. We understand where you're going.
Like, I don't quite understand that being the satisfying way of explaining the situation. It's like, oh, well, we're going to up the urgency. It's like, well, you've kind of done the things that we're going to up the urgency anyway. So like, I don't really get what Chris Ballard is supposed to do this year that's going to make it seem like winning is more urgent than it should have been before.
Yeah, I don't understand that either, because you're, in a way, and I don't think this was intentional, it's almost like you're gaslighting the fans who feel like they've already invested so much into being a fan of this team and trying to support this team. Or in some ways, the reaction that I got, Jim, was we gained some hope with the change in ownership, with you stepping in and thinking that things will be different, because let's be honest, and Jordan Rodriguez and Zach Kiefer wrote this in their story, and we've talked about this previously, Jim. The health of Jim Irsay, I believe, truly was somewhat of a factor in GM search, coaching search, whatever that might be, if you choose to go a different route. So when things got pretty disastrous after the 2022 season and we saw Irsay's health decline and he was less and less public, who's going to be calling shots and making decisions and doing all those things if he's not healthy enough to, quite frankly, be involved in all these decisions? Then he obviously passes away. Carlie Irsay-Gordon and her sister step in. The expectation from fans is, okay, now we have someone in here who's ready to potentially be different, change things, hold people accountable. And she kind of gave that vibe back in June where she said they know they have things to fix and this hasn't been good enough. And the question I'm kicking myself for not asking, and really, I mean, it would have been a more of a performative question than a productive one. But what exactly did they fix? And she hinted at some things. Well, we got some pieces in there, and the potent offense early on in the season, and we were one of the best teams. She mentioned injury, all of that, but like, is that enough for me to believe that essentially better injury luck and I don't know, a tougher mindset in the fourth quarter is gonna make this team a contender next year? Because that's what you're trying to sell. Like, I get the whole, it's the highest sense of urgency, but she didn't quantify or lay out any tangible signs for what that is. And granted, I wouldn't do that if I was her either. Like,
Well,
I wouldn't pigeonhole myself. But like, when she was asked if these playoffs are bust, Jim, she didn't go that route.
I know she did. Okay, there's one thing she did do. One, and it kind of happened
I'm
by
listening.
accident. You, I think, asked about Chris Ballard's contract. I, I,
I see where you're going.
she's,
Yeah.
yeah. So she's going, assuming this is the decision she makes, but I think she's going to make him operate as a lame duck GM. I think she's going to make him operate with 1 year left, which doesn't typically happen in the NFL. You don't see it. You don't want guys operating with 1 year left because they make crazy decisions when they tend to be trying to like get their contract extended and survive. But maybe that is what she was suggesting by the higher sense of urgency is that he's listen, if he doesn't prove it, he's not going to get retained. It also makes things easier, I guess, for her. She won't have to fire him next year. His contract will just be up and it'll be gone. Like, he'll be gone if they don't want to bring him back. So I will say that is the only tangible thing I thought in terms of higher sense of urgency that is at least out there. And again, like, that wasn't so much her doing. I guess it is if she's not giving him an extension, but it's really just like the matter of the fact, which is his contract is expiring after next year. So there is that. But again, like, I don't know if that's even a good thing. Do you want a GM operating as a lame duck? Is that the urgency level you want? I don't know. I'm honest. It doesn't. Most teams don't do that. So I'm guessing it's not a great idea.
I'll take this a step further, Jim, and let me know if I'm like way off with this. I think of that response that she gave to my question about the contract.
Yeah,
And I think of Kevin Bowen asking her, do you view Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen as tied together?
yeah,
If one goes, they both go. And she said, I think that's probably a question for the same day next year. And that to me was like, okay, maybe we are getting a little more umph when it comes to Chris Ballard outside of getting rid of him this year. It's do or die. Now, she didn't go that far. She wouldn't say playoffs or
right.
bust. But for me, my own personal baseline, it should be that. Because you don't run this back without the expectation to get into the playoffs. Now, granted, you can argue going into 2025, you have a lot of question marks. Do we find a quarterback? You
Yeah,
did in Daniel Jones. We're taking a swing on Travarius Ward, who, by the way, is thinking about his future with
yeah,
retirement or has things to decide with his concussion issues this year. And you spent money on Cam Bynum. So you did a lot of things differently to see if the results would be fruitful, and they were for the better part of 2 months. And now the expectation that you've set for yourself, especially with not making any wholesale changes, is that you're going to be better next year. And by better, I mean not starting off high. I don't care really how you start, whatever. Get into the dance, get into the playoffs, and then see where it takes you from there. But at the crux of it, Jim, I think, again, we're looking at some of the fans' frustration is
yeah.
why should we believe that Chris Ballard is the one that can fix it? Why, to a degree, why should we think that Shane is the one that's going to fix this? Because I don't want to absolve him either.
No,
He's another guy, and shout out to my buddy Kevin Bowen for pointing this out and looking this up. He is 7-22 during his tenure against teams who finished the season with a winning record above 500.
yep,
The Colts are also 2-10 against the Texans and the Jaguars during his tenure. And I get that he's had injuries, but as we've laid out, other teams have dealt with injuries. Hell, the Texans, for crying out loud. The Texans
yep,
started 0-3,
yep.
They lost CJ Stroud for, I believe, about a month during the season. They went 3-0 with their backup, Davis Mills, and they ended the season on a 9-game winning streak. I believe tied for their franchise record. And did they win the division? No, but they got into the dance. The Jaguars, obviously, they dealt with some injuries early on. They lost what many thought would be one of the best rookies of this class, Travis Hunter. I want to say pretty fairly early in the season, and they still went to the playoffs. So why can't your teams, you Shane Steichen, you Chris Ballard, figure out a way to get over the hump? And that is a question that even talking to Shane yesterday during his exit interview, he kind of failed to answer. I asked him flat out, why can't your team beat good teams consistently? Well, I got to find the answer to that. And that's what frustrates people is like, well, you've had 3 years to find the answer, and you keep saying, we're going to fight like crazy and all. I don't want to make fun of Shane, but like all of his like one-liners, boy, the amount of times I have fans tell me, oh, I already know what he's going to say. Why are you even quoting this? We got to fight like crazy. This is on me. We're going to try harder. Like, dude, that's old news. So like those things, that stench of mediocrity, those excuses, those are not valid. They haven't been valid for a very long time, and they're really not valid, to use, I guess, still page out of Carlie's playbook. They're really the sense of urgency and no longer wanting to hear those words is very high. So I was, again, respected that she came out there, but also not moved by any of it. And I actually think that, I don't play the whole, like, did you win or lose the press conference game? Because it's pointless. I mean, Nick Sirianni had a horrible introductory press conference with the Eagles, and he won a Super Bowl a couple years later. So that isn't the end all be all. But I do, again, feel for the Colts fans who left that thinking, boy, we are in big trouble because the owner that we have doesn't really have a concrete plan that she can lay out for us to get better, to improve, other than I believe in Shane, I believe in Chris, and we have to find a way to finish games. Well, what things are you doing? That's the part that, like, that's the missing piece to all of this. We talked to her for about, 20 minutes yesterday, and you left feeling like, okay, we understand you're confident, but why? And that's always my question is why? Why and how? How are you going to do this, and why do you want to do this? And those are the questions I think that were asked, and honestly, the answers were unsatisfactory. But to your point, Jim, what can you say after doing this again? 10 years for Chris Ballard.
I mean, I'm looking at. I pulled up their schedule while you were talking for next year. It's gonna be tough. It's not an easy schedule. Not a lot of gimmies in there. Play a third place schedule, but for them, that, like, it's not going to help that much, honestly. Like, that actually means they end up playing the Chiefs because of that next year, which doesn't seem like it's a win. Yeah, man. I said, there's a lot. It's hard to understand the thinking if you're a Colts fan, logically looking at Chris Ballard's 9 years and being like, I don't understand how this could be what happens, and it just really doesn't seem like Carlie and her sisters were weighing the previous 8 years in the decision.
Here's the question I have for you then, because I don't want to make it seem like it's all doom and gloom. It's all over now. Some people might be thinking, James, you can't save this franchise. And trust me, I'm not trying. But, okay, the decision has been made. Chris Ballard's back. Shane Steichen's back. Both are flawed. We've laid that out pretty eloquently here on the podcast and also in pretty much every single story you've edited for me for the last, however many years I've been on this beat. But now that they're here, what changes do you think can actually be made? Because we've talked about this.
Okay.
And I think you were on this train a little bit earlier than me, just because I feel like I was knee deep in Phillip Rivers come out of retirement. And you're telling me, oh, by the way, when you get done with that, there's some other old guys on this team that maybe aren't producing to the level that they need to be, particularly on defense. So would that be where you start if you're going to make changes or tweaks to try to make this roster better?
Yes, and assuming they still have Lou Anarumo as their defensive coordinator, who might be interviewing. He's interviewing for head coaching jobs right now.
So hot commodity right now.
Might be a change. Like, it's hard not to look up and down the defense and think the best days are behind some of these guys. I mean, DeForest Buckner is a freaking star, all pro player, like one of the better defensive tackles I've seen in the last 5-10 years. But he's dealing with a really serious neck injury now. it appears.
Yeah, he had a
Um,
neck brace on in the locker room, not moving like the typical Buckner. So again, we didn't talk to him yesterday during the locker room clean out day and all of that, but that's a factor to consider for a 31-year-old.
he's gonna be. He's gonna be 32 in March. Like he's gonna play all of next year at 32. We talk about Kenny Moore is probably past his peak. I think Zaire Franklin is probably past his linebacking peak. I think Charvarius Ford, as you mentioned, pretty much said if he doesn't retire, if he gets one more concussion, he will retire. So that's one of those things that if you're Chris Ballard, you just have to plan for. You just have to assume you might not have Charvarius Ward next year. You got Sauce Gardner, who I know is young and a good player, but he's recovering from a serious injury. Like this defense is old, and the staples of it, the guys who make it go, who make it run. I mentioned Grover Stewart's another guy going to be in his 30s now. Good again. These are all good players. I'm not trying to knock any of them, but I am saying that you might have missed the window defensively to be the best possible team that you can be. And now you don't have a first round pick to inject talent into that. And I haven't mentioned the pass rush yet. Like, what a disappointment that unit was, honestly.
Oh
Like,
boy.
I mean, I want to give a small reprieve to Laiatu Latu. He still did made a lot of splash plays. He got a lot of pressures. I think he had a good year. But has he been the superstar or star that they were hoping that they got?
Best rusher in the draft, according to Ballard?
No, he certainly
Not
has
bad.
not been. So and then beyond that, like what are you counting on for next year? Like what are you banking on? Who are you bringing back that makes you feel good about getting after the passer? So again, this is one of those things where it goes beyond Ballard in theory about like, oh, this is gonna be a problem. And then again, we haven't even gotten to the offensive side of the ball. Like Quentin Nelson is a star, but how much longer will he be a star? Like that is again, it's worth asking as these guys get into their 30s at the very least. Like Daniel Jones is coming off the Achilles tear, and it sounds like they really want to bring him back, which okay, that's fine, but like and he's young enough that that could work. But like typically, those guys don't play their best. And by those guys, I mean people coming off Achilles tears don't play their best until the year after the year after. Like it takes a whole year of like you got to play, and then the next year you're back at peak. So are we talking about a bunch of Riley Leonard next year? Are we talking like doesn't seem like Andy Richardson's part of this team's plans? Like I don't know if they're gonna bring another veteran quarterback. I don't know. There are so many questions around this team. Also, shoot, I didn't even mention like Jonathan Taylor. We're getting to that point. Like he's an older back, second contract, like a lot of workload that you might not be able to put as much on him going forward.
He
Again,
didn't miss a practice this year, Jim.
yeah,
Would you bet on him being that healthy again next year? Just given
of
the
course not.
nature of his position and
No,
his age, like it's
300,
hard to justify it.
323 carries this year, 46 receptions. So we're talking about approaching 400 touches. That's after a year in which he had 300 carries and 18 receptions. So we're done back to back 300 carry seasons. That's a lot. It's a lot to put on any running back. Now he is special. Don't get me
Oh,
wrong. He is
absolutely.
good, but we did see him. We did see him slow down in the second half of this season after a pretty heavy workload in the first half. So again, there's just a lot of questions that go beyond just the quarterback or just the coach and just the GM. That like you advocated for this briefly in a story that we'll definitely talk about more. But like, if you were going to tear it down, starting with the GM and maybe the coach, maybe a new GM coming in and breaking it all down, starting all over, wouldn't have been the worst idea in the world, honestly,
Oh
given
boy.
given the age of some of these guys and where they're headed, and maybe you cash in some of the chips that you have in the guys like Jonathan Taylor or you know, I don't know, Michael Pittman. Like you're gonna have to make a major decision on him and versus Alec Pierce, and the age gap there is gonna make that interesting. So like,
And
man,
look,
yeah, it's this team. This team is got a very murky future beyond just the GM and coach.
so real quick, I know you mentioned the Sauce Gardner deal and kind of mentioned that in passing.
Mm,
That to me probably was the biggest signal, Jim, that they were going to be retained.
100%.
You're not letting a GM ship off 2 first-round picks and make a trade like that, which you greenlighted, by the way. And yesterday, Carlie said there was no hesitancy in doing that trade, which at the time I can't say I was critical of. I thought it was kind of crazy because it was for a cornerback, not an edge rusher. But
Yep.
given where they were, trying to go for it, they're in this championship window, or so they thought.
Yeah.
Especially with the way things are wide open now. I didn't hate the idea then, but now you are kind of hamstrung. Your
It's
future
part of the
is a
risk.
little bit
Yeah.
yeah, your future is a little bit more rigid because you don't have very many options to change. And that to me indicated again that they were going to be retained and Daniel Jones is going to get brought back.
Yeah.
So If he's brought back, what looks different around him to still help this offense or help this overall team get over the hump? Michael Pittman Jr., you're owed $29 million next year, brother. You're not getting that. The only way he's going to
Yeah, I
come
don't think so.
back is if he's on a restructured deal. They could cut him, save $24 million in salary cap, and only have $5 million in dead money. So when he talked in the locker room after that game, this is my last game as a Colt, he was very real about that. Same with Zaire and others when it comes to money they could save with aging players. But what bothers me beyond like those types of decisions is that the crux of your team building
Yeah.
is going to be around a quarterback coming off an Achilles tear who already has a lengthy injury history. Now, no knock on Daniel Jones. I think he's a very tough dude, and
Yeah.
hell, maybe one of the biggest reasons he'll be brought back beyond all the things that I laid out is that Alec Pierce pretty much told us yesterday, if you want me back, you get him, and he said they'll go a long way to bringing him back, more or less. Now they could also tag Alec Pierce, so you don't have as much freedom as he thinks. But point being, do you think it's going to be much better next year? Because you also have to have a contingency plan in place. If you're a serious team, you can't go into next year saying Daniel Jones, who again will fight like hell to be healthy, will be back for week one. He'll play the whole season. He's only played 16 games in his career one time. Now, granted, some other years he was benched, but most of those years he was hurt. He's had neck issues. He had the ACL, he's had the Achilles. I did ask Carlie about that, Jim, and she told me that was not an appropriate. She didn't think it was appropriate to answer about the Achilles being a factor. And I don't know how I felt about that response, but I thought it was more than fair because
Yeah. He's the
as much as
quarterback.
you want to defer to Chris Ballard and all of that, you are the owner and you're the one who decides if you want to run it back with a guy coming off an Achilles tear. So I get it. You felt like you were close, but there is
I
danger in thinking you're close when you still finish 8-9. You can't forget 7 straight losing games. I don't
yeah.
care who's out there. Even the way they lost the last one, that to me was probably the biggest indicator, Jim. And I'm like, blow all this up. I'm sick of watching this. Your starting defense is out there for the most part, and you still let Davis Mills, who had a horrible day, put together one drive to beat you
Yeah.
at the end, like they always do. So I can't sit here and say the team that I saw for the whole 2 months where you were 8-2 is the only team that this future rendition of the Colts can look like in 2026. You sure they won't regress? Are you sure? Because as much as we talk about, how close you were to getting a couple more wins late in the year, you were close to losing some of those ones too. Arizona Cardinals, PI call in the end zone against, I think it was McBride. You look at the game against Denver. If there's no leveraging call, whatever, do you win that one? Like those types of things, I'm just worried about when it comes to the state of this franchise and what they're doing
Yeah.
moving forward. And again, I understand why some fans are just checked out because they feel like this is not a formula that can work. Now, there might be some that are like, hey, keep it together. We're this close. But boy, you all are perpetual optimists. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, it's hard not to. I mean, again, that's why I think Carlie Irsay probably inherited some of that from her father, right? Big time optimist, always talking Super Bowls and playoffs and what's coming next and all the good stuff. And I guess I understand why she wants to feel that. I mean, I know why she wants to feel that way. It's you want to expect better things, and you saw great things the first half of the season, and you think, hey, we can recapture that magic. But for all the reasons you just laid out, like there's a lot of reason not to expect that. And I'll go further. Like I don't see them adding a significant quarterback to this mix. I don't
Nope.
think Chris Ballard is going to be able to afford a serviceable, competitive quarterback that he can add to the mix while also trying to boost the rest of this roster to make it playoff caliber. I think he's going to have to bank on Daniel Jones being healthy, and I think he's going to rely on what he saw in the last game from Riley Leonard to say that's my backup, and that's it. And maybe that'll work. I don't know. I don't want again. I haven't seen enough Riley Leonard to know what I think of him, to be honest with you, but I do know that I'm very concerned for Daniel Jones being the same guy that he was in the first half of the season. To be clear, I still don't know that that's the real Daniel Jones in general. I still am not quite positive that's like he's just fixed and a good quarterback now. We'll have to see. Like I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, the downturn only happened after he had the injury." Maybe, but guys play through injuries all the time, and that wasn't very good. It wasn't very good what we saw in those last few, like I think it was like 4 games before he tore the Achilles. So anyway, that part worries me. And again, I think you're 1,000% right to point out that this is kind of a house of cards. I guess the only, as you were talking, I guess like the only thing I could think of was to say is no first round pick next year. So bottoming out doesn't really help you in a large way. So I guess maybe Carlie was thinking, shoot, let's just run it back one more time. We'll try. And if it doesn't, then we'll tear it all down. We get our first round pick in 27 or 28, sorry. So, we'll stink in 27 and get that first round pick in 28, and that'll be it. Like, I guess I can't really spin it another way. Again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Our job is largely not to advocate for anything. Our job is to try to explain what is happening, what the Colts are thinking. That is what I think perhaps she is thinking. That's what it sounded like she was talking about yesterday. The high urgency thing is tough to understand, other than, like I said, other than the Ballard contract not being extended, which I assume it's not going to be. If it is, then I don't know what she was talking about with the higher urgency thing. If she gives him a new deal so that he's on the same, even a 2 or 3 year deal or whatever it would be to keep him on the same like contract uh, length as Shane Steichen, I at that point I wouldn't know what to do. But I don't know. Like I said, if you're a Colts fan and you're feeling low today, I get it. I get it. I 100% understand. I don't, there's not a lot of defense for the decision they made, though we're going to hear more of it, right? Because Chris Ballard is going to talk later this week, and he's going to have to defend himself. I mean, he had a little bit of this is not to knock Chris Ballard. I'm not saying this is what he did, but he had a little bit of a shield with Carlie going out there first and explaining the reasoning about why he's back.
Yeah.
Now he's going to come out there and he's going to again have to defend the resume, which it's kind of an impossible task at this point, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing he could say that would justify him being brought back other than looking at this 1 year in a vacuum and then looking at half of that 1 year. So,
When you put it like that, good
yeah,
lord.
it's tough. It's tough. But that is exactly what I believe Carlie Irsay-Gordon and her sisters in this regime did. And the one thing I'll mention before we have some other little housekeeping notes, Jim, is that when she says in her opening statement that she's pissed, we're pissed, we feel the fans, and she kind of, you know, mentions in one of her responses that my sisters and I, like I said, we promise to be the best. And that's what we're striving for. We're never going to stop doing that. Striving for the best is tough to sell when you're talking about a GM who is 70, 78, and 1 in his first 9 years, 0 AFC South titles, 1 playoff victory 7 years ago, now 8 years ago, and then 2 playoff appearances, with the last one being 6 years ago. That we're in the year 2026. So that's tough to sell. And I feel for the fans who are sick of hearing that. And quite
Yeah.
honestly, no matter what I write or what questions we ask, this all comes down to, and we'll go through all the song and dance. And trust me, I will be engaged as I always am about the
Of course.
draft and offseason and training camp, all those things. But we all know none of this will matter. And I won't even care, really, Jim, even if they start the year kind of hot. This time next year, if we're not sitting here talking about a playoff game, well, we should probably be sitting here talking about everyone not being here anymore.
Yeah, the next GM. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
is it playoffs or bust? I think it should be. I probably think it is, but hey, again, we say that every year. It seems like, Chris Ballard survives. The other thing I want to mention real quick, I know you touched on it a little bit, Jim. I did as well. Travaris Ward was very candid about the concussions he's been going through and the symptoms. He did say, even after he came back from the second concussion and was playing in those last couple of games before he got his third concussion, he was like, he just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
He also told a story about how he, bumped his head the other day or something like that and kind of got a headache off of that. So that was kind of scary. And he was very real about saying, hey, I've done everything I wanted to do in my career. I've won a Super Bowl, played in multiple Super Bowls, made a lot of money, or hella money, as he said. And he mentioned that he wants to be there for his family. And I think I didn't go there with him on this, Jim, but I think he also is guided by losing his daughter in recent years. And quite frankly, he wants to be there for his family, to live a long life, have a healthy life. And he said, I can't keep, his words, not mine, beating up my brain to play this sport. So that is a pretty significant development. He said he wants to make a decision ASAP. And I wanted to tell him, well, ASAP could be just telling me right now what you're going to do, and I can, get the scoop. That did not happen. So we'll see what comes of that moving forward. And then, like I said, as far as other little housekeeping items, DeForest Buckner didn't look like himself. Granted, he's just a week removed from neck surgery. We'll see how he is throughout the offseason. Daniel Jones said he expects to be ready by training camp. Probably optimistic, but we'll see from there. And then Alec Pierce said he looks forward to being courted out there with multiple suitors, if he even gets to that point, Jim. So real quick before we wrap this thing up, I want to get your thoughts on Alec in particular.
Sure.
He said, hey, DJ's my guy. If he's back, that would say a lot towards me trying to come back. But would you tag him?
Can I look up what exactly the wide receiver tag is?
I think it's $28 million. I just looked it up this morning.
No.
Caveat. Would you tag him with the intention of trying to come to a deal?
Here's the problem. I don't know that he's a $28 million a year player. He's really good, and let me start here. I'll take the L on Alec Pierce. I think I was down on him last year and said some things about him that he ended up proving me wrong.
Yeah, he has a picture of you in his locker, and he's like, "Man, that Jim Aiello guy, I hate him, so I'm going to catch this touchdown."
I mean, if that's what it takes, baby. You just put me up there. No. I mean, like I said, I'll start there. Like I was, I think last year we talked a lot about. I was big on Josh Downs. I thought he was going to have a great year, and again, I still am a big Josh Downs supporter. I think he's a very good player. But Alec Pierce turned a corner this year in terms of becoming a more complete receiver.
He's their number one.
One of the best jump ball, go up and get it deep threats in the NFL, but can do a lot more. I've seen it 1 year in terms of just being like a complete receiver. That to me doesn't signify a near $30 million contract. And if you franchise tag him, that's what the extension is going to be. The extension is going to be that plus. To me, is if you're his agent, you're saying he's worth $28 million.
Guaranteed.
So that's what you're going to pay him over an extended period of time. So I would, again, if you're the Colts, I 100% support bringing him back. I 100%, if that means getting, cutting or trading Michael Pittman and bringing Alec Pierce back, I would support that as well. I get that. Franchise tag's a little rich for me. I need a little more time to sit with it. I will think about it, but my gut instinct on this is that, no, I would not franchise tag him. I would try to work out an extension with him for sure, and I'd be comfortable in the $20 to $25 million a year range. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the cap jumps up a crazy amount, and $28 million isn't what I'm thinking it might be. Like I said, give me a minute to process. But right now, like I said, the initial gut was that I don't think I would tag him. That feels a little rich. But
I'll say this real quick, and I know I got to get out of here. But my point is, he has a bunch of leverage, and if you're trying to run him back, none of this works if you don't give Daniel Jones his best receiver. So if Alex says, "Pay me," or I'm leaving, that franchise tag might get a little more enticing. So again, we'll dive into all those decisions as we get closer to free agency. And I don't want to act like, I won some argument over Jim because I got the last word in here on the pod. But we try not to keep you too long. Try to keep it nice.
Well, you can't get the last word because I got to at least quickly before we close this thing up,
I forgot about this actually.
Congratulate you on being named Indiana Writer of the Year, man. That is awesome. And like I said, I know you didn't need any more confidence going into that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, man. Like I said, I'm like super happy for you, proud of you, whatever it ends up being. But like like I said, it's well earned. You've crushed it both this year and in previous years. Colts fans are not even just Colts fans. Let me just say, like, people in Indiana are very lucky to have you covering the Colts and the Pacers and the Fever and everything else that you do there. We are lucky at The Athletic to have you here. I love working with you and thrilled for you. It's an awesome and very cool honor. So I wanted to say congratulations and mean it on the podcast.
Well, there we go. Look, at least somebody in this market is leaving the 2025 year a little happy. So shout out to the National Sports Media Association for the honor. Thank you to Jim and all my other editors at The Athletic, and obviously to the state of Indiana for all the crazy sports stories. I mean, the Colts are never boring, so I guess that helps my chances of winning. So, until next time, my friends, stay safe. We'll catch up with you after talking to Chris Ballard later this week.